Holy smokes, we got 2 people waiting on me. That's awesome. Everyone, this is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the NautilusDryDocks.com, back for another evening in November 2019. I am very happy that you managed to join me and excited to talk about submarines and all of the related stuff. As per usual, if we go through the conversation and you have a question, just type it in there and I will try and get to it live. And if you have any input to offer as well, by all means, use that comment section. Share the vast wealth of your knowledge with everybody. So, got some cool things to talk about. I was recently on a trip. Headed up to Virginia Beach, Virginia, to talk to the illustrious David Merriman III. And Dave, for those of you who do not know, is really kind of one of if not the main figures in the RC submarine world, because he helped to commercialize the watertight cylinder. Up to that point, it was a lot of homebrew stuff, but he managed to put a product out there that allowed people to build their own submarines. But he's got a vast repertoire of knowledge when it comes to model building. Obviously, he's a professional modeler. He's worked on a bunch of really cool submarine movies like, I believe, Crimson Tide, Hunt for Red October. Movies you know. But at any rate, he and I have been working together for quite a while now, and we are redesigning our line of SubDriver watertight cylinders. They've been out now in this current iteration for a little while, but he and I got together and we decided to revamp the design to make it better for you guys, the customer. And we're calling them the Modular SubDriver or SubDriver Mark II. The idea being that you will be able to now, rather than having to buy bespoke cylinders, one for each different type of model, you will be able to select your motor compartment diameter and shafts. You will be able to select your ballast diameter and then your battery compartment diameter. So you could, in theory, have, for example, if you had an ARC model Type 7, you could have a 2.5-inch motor compartment that goes up to a 3-inch ballast tank and scales back down to a 2.5-inch battery compartment. That'll shorten up your ballast tank and allow it to work a lot more efficiently for everybody. And the advantage to this is I will be able to hold inventory here a lot easier because I don't have to carry one cylinder for every boat. I can carry sections and build your perfect cylinder for you as you order it. So we worked on that for quite a while. The other thing that he and I did is we worked down the production methodology for 1/32 and 1/48 scale torpedoes. So we are getting much closer on that. Master patterns have already been developed. Molds are already in place. We are now casting those bodies and finalizing the trigger mechanism for the launcher. So slow progress, but steady progress on operational torpedo kits for everybody in 32nd scale and 1/48 scale. Very cool stuff. I'm super excited about that. From a selfish perspective, because I have to get that 1/30th scale Type 21 going, and that's got a 6-rack torpedo launcher, and I need torpedoes for it. So that's kind of important to me. While I was there, Dave imparted to me some of his knowledge about some things that I was familiar with, but not intimately, not using on a regular basis, let's say. And the first of them is a really simple kind of life hack for your shop. And I absolutely love it. Now, if you take a look back here, this is my workbench, my new workbench. And you can see Sitting on top are towels. These are cheap $3 towels I got off of Amazon. If you take a look at what my work surface kind of looked like underneath there, you can see paint, you can see glue, you can see all sorts of nastiness there. But Dave kind of introduced me to the idea of utilizing these towels as a work surface. So you lay them down on top of your work surface, and what it does, obviously, it captures glue, it captures paint, and all of that fun stuff. But it does a couple of other things that are kind of important to we modelers as well. Number one, if you put anything down on it, it protects it from getting scratched or banged up. So that's obviously kind of a big one. The other thing that it does, because we deal with small parts so often, let's see if I can illustrate this here. Got a little dish of small parts here. If I switch this around, typically if you were to dump this out on like a wooden workbench, these would scatter everywhere, but you can see that towel captures them. They sit without going anywhere, and you can actually see where they are. And not only that, but you can pick them up exceptionally easily. This is a flat washer. If it was sitting on a flat work surface, you'd never be able to pick it up without tweezers, but this is obviously super easy to do. So I love this. I am going to be utilizing this on my major work surfaces from now on. And hopefully you guys enjoy that little kind of life hack for working on your boats, or anything else for that matter. And the cool thing about these towels is obviously at $3, they're completely disposable. So once they get dirty, you just simply roll them up into a ball, pitch them into the garbage, and break out another $3 towel. So I love it. Absolutely love it. The other thing that he introduced me to, and obviously I was aware of it, but I had never actually done it, and that is the idea of wet sanding. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, yeah, obviously. I've never used it before. I've toughed through grinding away, having all the dust and garbage in the air and getting all over everything in my garage. So what he introduced me to, and this was when we were manufacturing the new bulkheads for the SubDriver, it's the idea of wet sanding. So you use special sandpaper that will take the water. You don't want to use like a paper-based sandpaper. But what you do is you wet down the work. And wet sanding actually has a ton of advantages that I really wasn't aware of. Now, anybody who's worked on cars is obviously probably very much aware of this. But the thing about wet sanding, obviously because it's wet, is virtually no dust. So everything is all captured by the water, stays on the work surface, and you just simply wipe it down or wash it down, and that removes all of the removed material. Huge advantage to that. The other thing that it does, it actually prolongs the life of your sandpaper. It's easier on the sandpaper. You're not getting the grit in there, clogging it all up and knocking all of the granules off of there. And then probably most importantly, it actually results in a smoother finish on your boat. So a lot of advantages to that, and obviously it's super easy. Just get some wet sandable dry paper, sandpaper. Make sure that your filler is compatible with that, and just wet everything down and sand it. It works really, really good. I did it on this project that I'm going to show you here in a minute. First big one that I've managed to use it on, and I am sold. I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay. Got a new 3D file that's going to be coming out tomorrow. I've been working on it for a while. I was actually quasi-contracted by a gentleman out of France who was quite in love with French submarine. And actually quite a few people are interested in the French submarines for some reason. Maybe the French people are just very passionate about their submarines. But he reached out to me, sent me all of the blueprints, and I have been working on it for the last little while, on and off, in between projects. And this one turned out really good. As I go, I'm getting better and better at the design of these projects. And let's share with you the latest one. So this is, I'm gonna pronounce it like an Englishman, redoubtable. In 1/96th scale, French submarine, and this entire boat was 3D printed. I did not go through any of the time and energy of coating it with resin and sanding it. So this is basically kind of right out of the printer. I've joined everything together, sanded down the seams, and this is the project just with a real quick paint and weathering job. So flat black paint, top and bottom. I used spray paint, a camouflage green spray paint with a mask, just to hit that really quickly. Some pastels to get the streaking in the hull. And this is what we ended up with. So these files I am going to attempt to get uploaded and available for download tomorrow. Of the 3 that are going to be out there, this is by far the best one in terms of quality, fit, and finish, I think, that I have done. But I really like it. It's a unique boat, and in particular, I kind of like these flying rudders. If you take a look in the back, I've never really seen, this on a modern boat before. You've got these gaps in between the rudders and the stabilizers here. But it's just a really, really unique boat. This is a pretty authentic prop based on the photos that I've seen. I'll show you what the inside looks like. So this is the prototype, the proof of concept that I have, and I do that for all of the 3D files that I put together. Single screw holds everything down. Come on, this is hard to do one-handed. There we go. This is what the inside looks like. So I've designed these bulkheads to accept a 3/16 inch brass pin, and these go into kind of receptacles in the top hull right there. I saw a comment in there from an individual. I'm going to call you out on it. Let me see here. Who was just talking there? Henry Mills. PLA will lose its rigidity with prolonged contact with water. Well, yeah, if you leave it in the water for like months and months. Who leaves their submarine in the water for months and months and months? It just doesn't happen. I've been printing and running subs, obviously not like years and years at a time, but all of the comments and research that I've seen basically says that PLA is fine in water, and this is actually PLA plus. It's a more stabilized plastic than standard PLA plastic, but everybody's so frightened of PLA in water. That is not the issue. In my experience, the real issue with 3D printing hulls, let me see if I can get this switched around here. Oh, back and forth, hold on, I'll find you. Is that it has an extremely low melting point. It gets soft at a very low temperature. Unfortunately for us, we've got black submarines, and we like running our boats outside. So the problem is that sun beats down on the hull, heats it up, and then what you'll end up with is sagging or warping of the part. So that is the biggest issue with utilizing PLA plastic. Now, someone made a comment about doing an epoxy wash. Epoxy in and of itself also softens with heat. So you put that in the mix with PLA plastic. I don't know that that's going to solve the issue. If you really wanted to, you would actually need to lay a layer of glass up over the whole thing, which means basically you lose all of the details in the boat. So in this particular one, for example, I managed to get all of the flood holes and the deck delineation and all of that stuff. There was somebody was just talking about the fusing of 3D printed parts. Now, if you take a look right here, I fused these together with a soldering gun. So you can glue it with just some thin CA, and then what I did is I ran a soldering iron over that seam and actually fused these plastic parts together. So this entire hull is 100% one piece, completely fused together. I was just going to show you some of these control surfaces. So again, this one is all rigged up with all of the control surfaces, the linkages, the propeller, all of the bushings, everything is in it. And as I have done with my past, proof of concept boats for all of these files, this will be available if anybody wants to buy it. It'll be out there if you want to purchase it. I'll make a product page for it on the website. Yeah, so that is it. That's the 3D printed file. Now, I'm going to back up just a little bit here and talk about why I am doing this. So, I personally believe that we need to get more people into the RC submarine hobby. The issue is, number one, it's very complicated. I've told people over and over again, this is a hobby for the elite. If you're into RC cars and you find them complicated, you will never be able to tackle an RC submarine. It takes a certain mentality, takes a certain skill set, a certain level of patience, and quite frankly, education in order to understand the methodology, the functionality, and everything about this boat. But the other barrier to this is the expense. Hulls can range in price, from like $100 for a plastic model conversion of a decent scale, up to $2,000, for some of the more, museum quality, large scale hulls out there. So obviously that's an expense. Now, if you have a printer, which more and more people are doing, or at least access to it, for the cost of, let's say, $40 or $50 of filament, you could 3D print your entire submarine. Obviously, less your drive shaft and propeller and all of those things that are kind of hard to 3D print, but it helps reduce the cost. And obviously, it's a fun project to do as well. So that's the primary idea behind my offering 3D files for download. Hopefully it will manage to get more people interested in the hobby, hooked on the hobby, and get more people in the hobby. So it's all about scale, right? The more stuff we build, the cheaper we can build it for, the less expensive it ends up being on the market. And that is good for everyone. More selection, more quality, more innovation, all awesome stuff. So I've mentioned to you guys before, and you can see on my shirt there, the Dive Tribe Elite group, talking about the 3D hulls. Every month, 2 months, I try to offer an incentive for those people that have actually bucked up and bought membership into my Dive Tribe Elite. And what I'm going to be offering this month for a limited time for anybody who is a Dive Tribe Elite member, half price for any of the 3D files that I have on there right now. Obviously, starting with the Redoubtable, which is the new one out there. Let me take a look at some of the comments in here. If you do the plans, try to offer kits that work. Don't really know how I'm supposed to take that. Kits that work, it's not the kits that end up making it work, it's the guy that's building it. If you give me a mayonnaise jar and an electric motor, I will build an RC submarine out of it. On the flip side, I could give somebody a completely engineered kit with fully detailed instructions, and they would potentially not be able to build an RC submarine. So, interesting comment. If you want to flesh that one out, by all means. Let's see what we got on here. Racing submarines. That's an interesting idea. Obviously, certain submarines lend themselves to speed more than others. The German Delphin class is one that's classically a high performance submarine, but realistically, if you put a big enough motor, a big enough battery in almost any boat, you'll get some serious speed out of it. If you check one of the very first videos that I uploaded, actually, if you go to the video page of my website and scroll all the way down to the bottom, it's fastest U-boat in the fleet, and it was a surface runner. It was something I took in on trade from someone, but he put some racing motors in it. And if you ever want to see a German U-boat get up on plane, check out that video. It's really cool. It's fun to watch. Perhaps not that practical. Boy, if they could get up and move like that during the war, that would have been an interesting outcome for all of us. But fortunately for us, it didn't work out that way. But check it out. Fastest U-boat in the fleet, I think, was the name of it. And that was like 12 or 13 years ago that I uploaded that particular video. So check it out. Racing submarines is one thing, but the thing that I actually found to be the most fun was the driving competitions. So it was a timed race, so there's a speed element to it as well, but it's also about precision. I've seen it in the past before where they'll suspend hula hoops under the water, and the idea was you had to steer your RC submarine through the submerged hula hoops in order to get the point for that particular point of the slalom. So you need to understand the turning radius of your boat. You need to understand at what depth it's operating. That is really the true mark of an RC submarine driver. Putting around on the surface is one thing, putting around at periscope depth is one thing, but to be able to go between the two at will and to conform to a very strict parameter or pathway, that is a lot of fun. I would love to see a competition like that brought to some of these fun runs and sub-regattas. So we got Type 21 saying, clarifying, no, I meant the list of pieces. I typically do up videos, and I have in the past, that show you all of the pieces and precisely where each one goes, how it gets installed, in what order you install it, and how you install it. So I don't know how much more you can ask for. I suppose I could do written versions, but in today's day and age, it's all about the videos. Check out the stats. People aren't reading anymore. They'll hop on YouTube for everything, including you guys, all 42 of you right now, checking out this video rather than reading my newsletters and that kind of thing. So we talked a lot about 3D printed subs. talked about wet sanding, we talked about torpedoes. One thing that we are going to be messing around with here coming up, and honestly, I feel a little bit embarrassed that I am not more familiar with them, and that's the idea of brushed motors in an RC submarine. So let me try to impart to you guys my limited knowledge of brushless motors, and for those of you who are experts, by all means, chime in. So there's really two kinds of brushless. Let's back up. There's two kinds of electric motors that you can put in. There's brushed and brushless. The brushed basically have brushes that rake across the armature inside the electric motor, and that's where the electrical contact is made inside. Brushless do not have those. So a lot of people are going to brushless now because they are between 10 and 20% more efficient, and they're a lot less intensive in terms of maintenance. There are two kinds of brushless motors. There's in-runners, which basically has the inner part of the motor spinning. That's where the shaft, so think of your traditional electric motor with a little shaft sticking out of it. And then you've got what are called outrunners, and I've got one sitting right here. The whole outside of it spins. I can't show you with one hand. So it spins on the outside like that, the whole outside of it. In-runners typically operate at exceptionally high RPMs. I've seen some of these brushless motors that operate at like 200,000 RPM. God, can you imagine putting that in an RC submarine? You would burn through your seals in a heartbeat, that sucker. But all of the brushless motors are rated with a kilovolt rating, a kV rating. I think it's kilovolt. Maybe it stands for something else. kV rating, and that's basically when you multiply that by the voltage, it gives you the number of RPM at no load. The lowest kV that I could see in an in-runner was like 3,000. So when you multiply that by even 7.2 volts, you're still talking about like 20,000 RPM, which is way, way, way too much for RC submarines. Really, what we want is sub 1,000 for sure. In order to do that, what I've basically found is we need to go to the outrunner. So that's what we're looking at doing. They're harder to mount, but they've got the advantage of better torque and obviously lower RPMs. So we're playing around with that for the new SubDrivers. We're going to get with the 21st century and switch from these brushed motors, which have been around since probably like the turn of the century, and go to the brushless motors. I saw some comments in there from some people. If you guys have a source for high pole, low kV brushless motors with reversible electronic speed controllers, because we need to be able to go not only forward but reverse, let me know, man. I would love to find out where you potentially got them from. I found some, but we need a reliable source at a good price for everybody. So hit me up, bob@rc-sub.com, or through my website. Boy, you guys love using the chat functionality on my website. Maybe I'm old school, but I love having people email me. But I've got this like chat functionality in the bottom of my website. It like came preloaded, and people will, instead of emailing me, they'll just go to my website and they'll like type in the chat box. Even though I'm not there, I guess they use it like email. I find it really interesting. It's interesting. Somebody asking, hi Bob, I do use always brushless motors. Awesome. Again, if you can send along a source, a reliable source, a cheap source for brushless motors that we could potentially integrate into our new SubDrivers, I would love to get that information. Hit me up. kind of running out of stuff to talk about. I was hoping people would have more questions, but as usual, you guys just kind of love and coming in here and talking about or listening more than participating. So we'll give you, as per usual, a few minutes of lead time to think about some questions, and then nothing crops up, I will cut it loose and we'll queue things up later. I do have another video that's going to get uploaded tomorrow, and actually this is a good, I can show this. It's like a sneak peek. So when I put this together, as PLA is wont to do it throughout the course of the buildup, it actually ended up twisting on me a little bit. And it was fine. It looked fine. But I didn't like it because there was a gap of about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe up to an 1/8 of an inch at one point here along the side of the hull. So the video that I put together is super quick, and it basically goes into what to do if you've got a big gap in your submarine and heating the hull and trying to sandwich it together and all of that stuff just doesn't work. So let me see if I can get this back together again. And you can see how I did this, by the way. This is a traditional Z-cut in a submarine. So we got a lip in the front there. We're just going to slide that back. That drops down. Boy, that was one-handed. That was talent there. But you can see, well, I don't have this held down, but it's got a nice tight seam right there. I mean, it's barely visible. And this is obviously post, rework. So the idea, the basic idea is you get everything pinned down, bolted down as though it would be in operation of your boat. Put some masking tape on either the top or the bottom, whichever one is the most or least messed up. And in my particular case, the upper hull was nice and straight. The lower one was doing all sorts of funky stuff. You get the masking tape on the top, and then on the bottom, I basically slathered in, pressed in filler. And it's squished, you can see it, this white filler in between. And a little bit of it oozed, into the inside, but it's actually pretty clean. I think I did a pretty good job. And then I let it harden, sanded the outside down, broke the connection apart, cleaned it up a little bit, and this is what you're left with. It's a razor thin seam between the upper and lower hull. So I've got a video, real short. It's probably going to be like 10 minutes long. That I'll upload for you guys tomorrow. That's good for not only the longitudinal issues that you may be having, but also potentially if you've got a big nasty gap along the back between the forward section of the hull and the rear section of the hull. Anywhere like that can be addressed with that technique. So first order of business, typically always you want to try and use what's already there, because at one time, in theory, your hull made it up nicely, and whatever you did messed it up, so congratulations. But if that happened and manipulating the hull back into shape is just not going to work for you, this is a great way to get that seam nice and tight and looking super awesome. So watch for that coming out tomorrow. Tell us where you got that awful haircut. What's wrong with that, Dave? This would look much better if I wasn't so gray. That it just disappears into the side of my head. I like it. You can go to hell. More importantly, my wife likes it, and she's more important than you. So tough. Bite me, Dave. All right. Enough talk about my hair. Last chance for you to get the questions in this week. Obviously, I got to back up here. Have you ever tried ABS? Yeah, I have for printing. ABS is a good solid plastic. Unfortunately, it does not typically produce highly detailed prints. You end up with a lot of striation and artifacts from the 3D printing process, and they're a little bit harder to clean up. Now you can use chemicals to to blend it, to wash it, and that typically works too. But it's just not as user-friendly a plastic as the PLA plastics. The other big thing about utilizing ABS is you need to have a printer that supports it, because it melts at a different point than PLA plastic. So it's only really the more expensive printers that can handle multiple materials. Most of the cheaper ones that people are going to have access to are going to be printing in PLA and PLA-ish plastics only. And really, again, you can print in whatever. The files will work with any plastic. So if you've got the skill sets or the equipment to print in other materials, by all means, go ahead and do so. But that's the story on ABS. Yeah, absolutely works. Just a little bit harder to work with. All right, let me back up to where I left off here. Brushless outside the cylinder works well. We are going to check that out, by the way. Mounting those brushless motors on the outside. Now, it takes a certain kind of person to be able to operate a cylinder with the brushless motors on the outside, because it's not like you just take it out and you put it on the shelf and that's done. You need to maintain your equipment properly. Putting the brushless motors on the outside of the cylinder is going to add a layer of complexity to the maintenance and upkeep, both pre-operation and post-operation of the RC submarine. We need to make sure that the people who are going to be utilizing it understand exactly what those procedures are, and that they will do it for the most part. Otherwise, you know what? It's going to be my fault when it doesn't work. And I don't want that to happen. So, not good. All right. Type 7 build. Oh, Ed is frantic for his Type 7, and rightfully so. I still need to finish up the Type 21 and then the Ohio, and then we're going to be getting on to the Type 7 build. And for those of you who are interested, it's going to be a fun one. Now, it's going to utilize the new, actually this delay was a good thing, Ed, by the way, the new SubDriver module, which has a shorter ballast tank, which is a good thing. The build is also going to be incorporating torpedoes, lights, sound, and all sorts of cool things. And I'm going to be documenting it from beginning to end for everybody. So by all means, make sure you check that out when that gets queued up here, most likely within the next 60 days or something like that. Let's see here. How did you do the torpedoes? Hold on. I'll have a whole video on them when they come out. I'm not going to spoil things by getting into it now, and I don't even have anything to hold on to show you. 48th Nautilus. Actually, got some great news yesterday. We got the first test pull from the molds. I am contracting those out. So I did some preliminary work trying to see if we could handle production in-house. Unfortunately, because I am anticipating a fairly high demand for that particular product, I did not feel comfortable with the amount of labor involved that I'd be able to keep up with orders. So I am going to bite the bullet and pay somebody else to do it. Professional model making company that is set up with industrial commercial grade rotocasting equipment, which is what those molds were originally designed for. The small pieces will all be handled in-house. If things go well, we may be taking pre-orders before Christmas. Maybe. I am not committing to that. If not, it'll be early in the new year. But we will have different variations of that. We'll have static display versions will have static display with access to the interior, and then we'll have full RC variants available as well. Question, how is technology coming for static diving in 1/144 scale, or what do they have smaller than 3 feet? So there's actually a couple of really common popular models out there right now. Probably the two best well-known, I would say, out there is the Trumpeter Seawolf at 1/144 scale, and the 72nd scale Type 7, which I believe is right at 3 feet. Pretty sure. We've got starter kits for that. We've got subdrivers for those as well. I believe Trumpeter came out with an Astute kit, and I actually have one, but I have not had a chance to unbox it and take a look at it. But that would be of a size suitable for RC as well. If you're talking static dive, like anything is possible. I'm sure given enough time, energy, and resources, we could come up with a static diving submarine that is 6 inches in length, but it's a battle of diminishing returns as you get smaller and smaller in the boats. If you're into a challenge and you just want to do it because, by all means. But if you think smaller equates to cheaper, you are in for a rude awakening, because the smaller parts, the smaller components are typically not as commonly available, and they are therefore more expensive. Combine that with the fact that it is much harder to work on, and you end up with something that only the most masochistic individuals would have any pleasure in building. That is my opinion, and I am sticking to it. So yeah. And the Type 7, if you're looking for sub 3 foot models that are still of a decent size to have some presence, potentially could zip around in a pool. I know that's a concern for a lot of people. If you got a swimming pool, you want to make sure you're able to operate the boats in there. That would be probably what I would recommend. Okay. Have you ever tried to do a torpedo that had to fire from the sub? Yes, that would probably be the point, right? So there's two parts to a torpedo. There's one making the torpedo go, and then there is the launching of the torpedo. So the making the torpedo part go, I've got nailed down for these gas torpedoes. I'm finishing out the launching mechanism to make that reliable, and also to the point where you can have multiple tubes without the need for complicated electronics, solenoids, and that kind of thing. So it's going to be a mechanical launcher inspired by His Magnificentus, the illustrious David Merriman III, with his indexing mechanical torpedo launcher, which is a veritable work of art all of itself. So stay tuned for that. All right, I think I'm caught up. Will you ever bring back the fitting kit for the Type 9? All right, fitting kits. Yes. In my free time, what I want to do is take the master patterns, which I have for all of the boats, the Type 7, the Type 9, the Seawolf, the Type 23, probably forgetting some. I'm going to extract some of the extraneous parts. For example, Dave was really, really great about including bulkheads, for example, for his 72nd torpedo launcher, which is for many people extraneous, and it's a lot of extra work, obviously. So the core pieces, the resin control appendages with the embedded, shafts, the cylinder mounting bulkheads, propellers, all of that kind of stuff. Yes, they will be coming, but I am not going to promise when. I've got like 34 projects going on right now, And as always, you know, money talks. The people who have contracted with me to build them submarines get my priority, and rightfully so. They've elected to pay me up front for something that they will not likely see for months and months. So they get priority. But to answer your question, yes, it'll happen. It'll happen eventually. All right. This feels like a good place to leave off. I'm going to give you guys like 30 seconds to brainstorm any last minute questions, and then I am going to leave you all to your Thursday evenings, so you can get back in your shop and start building your boats. Or if you don't have a boat to build, then you can shop online at the Nautilus Dry Docks and buy some. Please do. I would love that. All right, guys. Thanks again. As always, I appreciate your patronage, checking out my, look at all the comments coming, my channel. Thanks again, everyone. I'll get the new lineup going. Oh, quick note. My family and I are going to be leaving town on Saturday for a week for Thanksgiving. I will catch up on all of the orders that are currently submitted, and those will go out before I leave. So if you got something in the queue, it'll go out before I go. But if you order something after that, you'll have to wait until I get back. So apologies in advance, but you have been warned. Thanks, everyone. Again, Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with NautilusDryDocks.com. Thanks for joining me, and we will catch all of you guys next time.